No, honey, I can't talk right now. Sorry. Anyway, a few months ago I was reviewing a diesel BMW X1 and I thought it was a very good car, but will swapping the diesel for an electric motor change my mind about the X1? These are my thoughts on the BMW iX1 xDrive 30.
At the beginning, I would like to point out that in this episode I will focus mainly on the electric drive aspects of the X1. I will only mention the interior and practicality when it's somehow affected by the powertrain. I suggest you watch my X1 diesel review to get the full picture. And now some stats and the market situation. The iX1 is BMW's next electric model after the i3, iX3, iX, i4 and i7. Like the iX3, i4 and i7, also the iX1 has an internal combustion-powered counterpart. The X1 is a practical compact crossover, one of BMW's European bestsellers, so it's no surprise a decision was made to base one of their EVs on it. The iX1 competes with models like the Mercedes-Benz EQA or the Volvo XC40 Recharge, among others.
The BMW iX1 has a 64.7 kWh battery pack and a claimed range of about 430 km depending on the trim. Energy consumption is about 17.5 kWh per 100 km, towing capacity is up to 1.2 tons, it's got 313 horsepower, 494 Nm of torque. That puts the iX1 somewhere between the EQA and the XC40 Recharge.
The manufacturer promises a 0 to 100 km per hour time of 5.6 seconds. In sport mode, I managed 1/10 quicker, and in personal, that's I think standard mode, 1/10 slower. A range of about 400 km is achievable when you're doing city or country road speeds. On the motorway at 120 km per hour, energy consumption is at around 20 kWh per 100 km. At 130 km per hour, it's above 21 kWh per 100 km, and I wouldn't hope for more than 300 km range at such speeds. Now, we are talking a summer day when the outside temperature was about 25 degrees Celsius. In the winter, the range will drop considerably.
But the range is not a problem if you have fast charger along the way, good route planning, and a universal access to various charging networks. Now, BMW offers something called BMW Charging. There's a card, there's an app, and basically it supports multiple charging networks across Europe. This includes most major operators in Poland, and BMW Navigation tends to focus on these chargers when planning the route. In theory, it sounds rather good.
In real life, things are not quite as rosy, at least in Poland. Charging network situation may vary across different European countries. On a 300 km route, a charging stop was scheduled on a 65 kW charger because the more powerful ones were too close to the start of the journey. The BMW iX1 charging peaks at 130 kW, but looking at the charging curve, it will still take about 100 kilowatts up to about 60% state of charge. Charging speed drops below 60 kilowatts only above 80% state of charge. So, theoretically, I could have used one of the theoretically faster chargers from a network that is not recognized by BMW Charging, but these chargers rarely put out the claimed power, so 65 kilowatts it was. Half an hour instead of 15 minutes. By the way, during one of the charging stops that day, I took a bathroom break and I bought something in a petrol station shop. It was a Friday afternoon, so there were queues, and all this took about 15 minutes, so with a sufficiently powerful charger, I wouldn't linger much longer than other drivers filling up with petrol. Of course, they wouldn't have to make many refueling stops on the same day, but that's a different story. Moving on.
The BMW charging card didn't work, and as I know from experience from my fellow car journalists, this is not the first time BMW charging cards fail to be recognized by Poland's Greenway chargers. Fortunately, I have my own Greenway account, which worked. So that day I was driving some 300 kilometers from Warsaw to Poznań, where I would spend a couple of hours and then drive 300 kilometers back home. I planned to stop at an underground parking lot in the city center where there are some 11 kilowatt charging points. This network is called Hello City, and it is also included in the BMW charging plan, but the BMW navigation didn't think that by inputting this particular parking lot address, I may also be thinking about charging. Well, it doesn't matter, because BMW navigation didn't know about the local roadworks, so I had to go around to find the parking entrance. Google navigation would have avoided this detour.
When I entered the car park, I realized the charging stations are closed for repainting. Hello City customer support claimed it wasn't aware of this situation, and the car park staff claimed they informed the charging network operator before the works began. Fortunately, I was allowed to park right next to one of the charging outlets and lead a cable to it through the tapes. BMW charging didn't work again, but I have my own Hello City account. On the day of writing this script, Hello City app showed only one of the 4 charging points as active, the one I used across the seal-off tape, while according to the BMW Charging app, they are all active.
BMW iX1 takes 11 kilowatts as standard, but there's an optional 22 kilowatt onboard charger. If you travel a lot, I'd seriously consider this option. When you're stopping somewhere for a couple of hours, you can recharge from a Type 2 socket, but you're not the asshole blocking a CCS plug. Anyway, I didn't stay long enough in Poznań for the 11 kilowatt Hello City charging points to get me enough juice for my return trip, so SatNav suggested a high-powered charger before getting back on the motorway. So far, so good.
Another network, and yet again BMW charging failed me. I have accounts with 5 or 6 charging networks in Poland, but not EV+, and I really didn't feel like going through the registration process. So I tried to go to an Ionity charger close by. This time, SatNav led me astray and I ended up on the motorway, and then I was stuck on a theoretically 100 kilowatt Orlen charger that put out barely 34 kilowatts. Half an hour later, and I was back on the road to another Orlen charger 100 kilometers away. This one put out 64 kilowatts, so half an hour later, and I was on my way home, just not very fast.
I can't blame BMW for the state of Polish charging infrastructure, obviously, but I'm surprised at how BMW charging completely failed me. A couple of years ago, I used it in Germany and northern Italy during my iX trip to the Alps, and it worked perfectly. Meanwhile, in Poland, it seems to be useless. By the way, BMW SatNav doesn't display not only some of the non-syndicated charger stations, but also some of the petrol stations seem to be missing, which is weird.
So, driving an EV across Poland requires, as usual, Android Auto, PlugShare, a better route planner and apps for every imaginable charging network, because you never know which one will be out of order on a given day. On the plus side, all chargers were vacant when I arrived. Only during my last charge, when I was hoping that a passing storm would put me out of my misery, a Kia e-Niro arrived, but the driver saw my PlugShare check-in and left.
So this was my summer 2023 EV guide to Poland. Now let's talk the iX1. How is it to drive? Well, it's rather pleasant. The soundproofing is fine, the driver assistance systems work well. I like that the lane change assist vibrates the steering wheel when there's a car in the blind spot and I turn on the indicator. In some brands, putting the indicator on results in an audible warning, so you're tempted to skip using the indicators altogether. I also like the adaptive recuperation. BMW has implemented it very well. When I let off the accelerator pedal, depending on the situation, the car can either coast or slow down while regenerating energy. The car slows down when there is a slower vehicle in front, obviously, but also when I'm going faster than the current speed limit, when there is like a crossing or a roundabout in front, and even when I turn on my indicator because I'm approaching an intersection. This works even without the route set in the navigation. And I think this kind of slowing down is better than the annoying ISA system in the latest cars, which beeps at you whenever you exceed the speed limit.
In the X1, I complained about the hard seats. In the iX1, they are, well, similar but sort of kind of more comfortable. Perhaps it's because of the lumbar support adjustment, which was an optional feature in the X1 and someone didn't order it. Looking at the spec sheet for the iX1, I can't tell whether lumbar support is also optional or is it standard here. BMW Poland no longer publishes a full options list, as apparently I was the only one to download it. So you can play with the configurator yourself.
Despite the relatively high-profile tires, on bigger potholes you can feel the iX1 weighs over 2 tons. Now, does it handle like a BMW though? In a moderate bend, when you get on a throttle, the car will go almost flat, but if you just roll into the corner, you can feel it lean. And in tighter corners, the tires squeal at the limit. It's good that this thing has xDrive. That's right, the iX1 has all-wheel drive. The electric motors in the front and in the rear have 190 horsepower each, but the power doesn't add up to 380. This is 313. Now, how will this little BMW handle my diagonal approach test? Let's find out.
I stop in the middle with 2 wheels on the diagonal with limited traction, and then I try to get going again. First approach is in normal mode. No problem here. Second approach is with hill start assist. Predictably, no problem either. Third approach is with ESP off, and this requires going into sports mode. A bit more wheel spin, but the car made it up without any major issues. It looks similar to the Volvo XC40 Recharge, where I also had my foot buried in the carpet and the computer decided how to distribute power. As standard, BMW X1 has 20 cm ground clearance. It's down to 19 cm with M suspension. The iX1 has 17 cm ground clearance, which is 6 mm less than the XC40 Recharge and still a centimeter more than my Mini Countryman.
The BMW iX1 cockpit is identical to that of the regular X1. There are large door pockets, there's a sizable cubby here under the center console. There are 2 cup holders, an induction charger, 2 USB-C ports, small flat storage under the armrest, and a medium-sized glove box. And since everything related to electrification is software-based, then even the buttons on the center console are the same regardless of the powertrain. Everything else, it's on the screen.
I like that I can set, for example, the level of charge at the charger or at the destination. This is useful when I'm going somewhere further and don't have time or ability to recharge at my first destination. The My BMW app works much better than it did a few years ago. Unlocking and locking the car or downloading a 3D view of the car surrounding now takes seconds, sort of, rather than minutes. The app also allows you to check the vehicle's location, charge status, turn on air conditioning, or even set a digital key as long as you have a phone that supports it. In the rear, there is no sliding seat option. That's because some of the battery pack is located underneath the seat. Other than that, there is the same amount of legroom and headroom, good-sized door pockets, air conditioning vents, and 2 USB-C ports. There are cup holders in the armrest and adjustable backrest tilt angle, which allows a more reclined sitting position or an extra inch of space in the boot when you need to fit something larger. The backrest splits 40-20-40. Boot capacity is slightly less than in the mild hybrid version. Here it's 490 liters instead of 500. With the backrests folded, you get 1495 liters. There is a small cable storage compartment under the boot floor, but the parcel shelf won't fit in it. And there is no frunk. I don't know how, but Volvo somehow managed to find a space for a frunk in the XC40 Recharge, and that's even with all-wheel drive. Prices of the BMW iX1 start at €55,000. This test car, with options, costs €72,950.
Other than the powertrain, the iX1 differs little from the internal combustion engine model, and that's a good thing. Unfortunately, every time I think to myself that maybe it's finally time to switch to an EV, I go on a road trip and the magic is gone. Infrastructure is one thing, but since cars today are designed around software, then I say the software, and not just BMW software, is not ready for EVs. And how do you like the BMW iX1? Perhaps you prefer one of its electric competitors, or maybe you just opted for a diesel. Let me know in the comment section below.
If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.